I do recommend you start with a bold statement. You don't want to say, you should listen to this because it will serve your law firm, or you should listen to this because it'll serve your legal interests. That's not typically going to be enough. You want to come in hot. You want the person to think, wow, this is really impactful. This is really necessary. This is really important. And one of the things that you can do that can help with this in terms of getting a bold statement out there is ask a question. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast, where on today's show, we are going to talk about how to optimize your short form video content. All right, so this is one of these topics that comes up time and time again, because as we know, video is the wave of the present and the future, right? People really want to see what is going on. They don't just want to hear you. They don't just want to read what you have to say. Video is the strongest tool that we have for getting the highest level of know, like, and trust factor that really gets our marketing to the next level. And so when we talk about video content, we're often talking about either long form content where you are interviewing someone for 30 minutes, or maybe you're recording a podcast and you're going into the weeds and kind of giving a lot of really great substantive information so that people can know that you are an authority. But as we know, the attention span of the human is going way down as we are consuming content in bite-sized pieces, right? That's the reason why the X platform, formerly known as Twitter, has such a powerful impact, because people like to read the snippets. They like a punchline. They want just a little piece of information. And even for people that want to consume longer form content, I don't mean to suggest that longer form content is going away, or that we don't still consume it. We do. But oftentimes the way that we get hooked on or even get marketed to for new platforms is with short form content, right? If you've ever been on YouTube, you know that that's where, you have your algorithm kind of feeding you suggestions about what you might like based on what you're already watching, but also how much content you are consuming. So if you're consuming a lot of content in a lot of different places, you're going to get a diverse array of recommendations. If you're only in one or two spaces, you're still going to get recommendations, but largely following that ilk. That's the reason why we kind of have talked about how we're getting into these political silos where if you start to consume information on the left, all you're going to be fed is information that's left-leaning. And if you're consuming information on the right, all that you're going to be fed is information on the right. So we have become a society full of extremes. We don't have too many moderates anymore, at least not in the sense that we once had, right? But I comment on that only because I want you to just recognize the power of video content, and in particular, the power of short form video content, because that's how you capture people to get them over to your long form content, where they can really start to form a parasocial bond with you. They can start to feel like they know you and really understand how you think and feel like you are their trusted advisor. And the more you can create that relationship before a person actually needs a legal service, or even after they need a little legal service, but they may have hired someone else and then regret that choice and might want to come back to you, or they might not have made a decision to buy yet, but they know they need someone, so they're trying to figure out who to go to. If you're the voice in their head, they're more likely to go to you. So with that, we really want to talk about how you can get a lot of traction out of your short form video content. Now, most of you are catching us here on our wonderful YouTube streets, right? That's the platform where we're giving out a lot of information, not only here on the podcast, but about Law Firm Mentor in general, and our business retreats that we have several times a year and the different programs that we have. But if you are catching us on YouTube, we want to ask you a favor. We want to ask that you subscribe to the channel so that you'll get notifications every time that we go live with another podcast episode or any additional updates about what's going on in the universe of Law Firm Mentor. And if you're on any other podcast platform, also subscribe, because that's where you're going to get your show updates on a regular basis. All right. So let's talk about short form video content. Now, there are lots of different elements to this, right? But a lot of people consume so much information about what is necessary to get like a lot of traction that I think a lot of times there's a resistance to even starting. And so we want to overcome that resistance. We want to get you just kind of doing it to start. And there's always going to be that hesitancy. A lot of lawyers have a tendency toward perfectionism, right? We want it to be just right. We want people to perceive us positively. We don't want to put out anything that's not just perfect. And the reality is, the longer you do it, the more improved you're going to be, right? You're going to get better at it. which means you have to start somewhere. So we just want you to get started. Literally start with a cell phone. If you have that much of a concern about what it's going to look like in the end, starting the practice of just getting stuff out there and seeing it's not the end of the world if it's not perfect. Most people are not going to chase you down and tell you how crappy your stuff is. You might not get the response that you want until you get better at it, but you're going to get some response. And the more response you get, the more it will feed on itself as you get better. So just keep that in mind. Now, top 3 strategies for how you can optimize your short form content. So the first thing I want to tell you is strategy number 1, you have to have a hook in the first 3 seconds. Okay. The question is always going to be, why should I listen to this, right? What's in it for me? If I click on something that is appealing to me, I see a really interesting thumbnail, some topic is a concern to me, some interest, some area of interest piques my interest. And then I get to the video, and the video is a person saying, hi, my name is, and I was born in a little town, on this side of the world. And now I am over here, and now I do this, and here's where my law firm is, and yada, 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 yada. I haven't figured out why I care yet. And remember, the hook that you're trying to get people interested in doesn't have to be some cataclysmic thing, right? You don't have to say something overwhelmingly provocative. You don't have to come up with the funniest thing or the cutest thing or the most igniting thing. It might be those things. And if you're great at coming up with that type of hook, by all means, use it, right? But if you're not, don't worry about it. You have to have something that says to the person, why should I listen to this? You want to answer that question in the first 3 seconds. Now, I do recommend you start with a bold statement, right? You don't want to say, you should listen to this because it will serve your law firm, or you should listen to this because it'll serve your legal interests. That's not typically going to be enough. You want to come in hot. You want the person to think, wow, this is really impactful. This is really necessary. This is really important, right? And one of the things that you can do that can help with this in terms of getting a bold statement out there is ask a question, right? You don't have to, again, go way out in the stratosphere with what you're doing, but simply asking a question triggers the mind to give an answer, right? We all have heard about that warning that people accused of crimes get, the Miranda warning. Well, the Miranda warning tells people you have a right to remain silent. I don't know how important that is, right? We know why that exists. Many of us do, right? You can read the case if you don't. But I don't know how impactful it is, because even though intellectually you may have just been told you have a right to remain silent, after that whole Miranda warning is read, if the very next thing that comes out of an officer's mouth is, where were you on the night of June 7th? Your instinct is to answer. Okay. That is a human instinct. Question prompts answer. So you want to think about that for your video marketing as well. How are you going to survive this year's tax season? Right? The first thing I think is, well, I don't know. How am I going to survive it? Right? You're about to tell me. Or where are you most at risk of losing your house in your divorce? Well, I don't know where I'm most at risk of losing my house in my divorce, right? Or I might think I have an answer. I might think, I'm not really at risk of that because, we have a prenup or something like that, right? Any number of reasons could prompt you to answer, but your mind starts looking for an answer. That's the important thing, because typically if you ask the question and your audience is now cued to give an answer, they're going to, want to know if their answer is what you say their answer should be, right? Am I saying the sky is falling and you're saying everything's fine, or vice versa? And if I'm not value testing, if I'm not testing if I'm correct in my assessment of whatever my answer to the question was, I'm going to be curious about, well, if I don't have any conception of what the answer is, what is it? What are you going to tell me? Right? So the question is a great way to engage people. The other thing is that you can use visuals as a way to get a hook, right? So again, if you're on a platform like YouTube, you have the ability to get people by virtue of having them see you. If you're on a social media platform, you have that same opportunity on Facebook and on Instagram. You want to get people interested. And again, we want to think bold, right? So bold doesn't have to be so outrageous that you have to be a creative designer or you have to be, a magnetic rock star of a person in order to do something bold. Bold just means impactful to the person who's going to see it, right? In some meaningful way. So when you think about the visuals, you want to think about what would draw the eye and have the eye want to learn more. What can create some curiosity? Sometimes just putting two strange things together can spark curiosity. It could be that you have on one side of the page a shoe and on the other side of the page an elephant. And anyone looking at that would say, well, how do those two things go together? Elephants don't wear shoes. No elephant could fit that shoe. Right? It's curious. It's something unusual. It's something that makes you say, well, why are these two things together? Right? Now, of course, your two things, whatever you put in your visual, should at some point connect the dots in your content. But first, just getting them to want to listen is the really important thing. Because if they don't want to listen, if they don't want to read, if they don't want to inquire as to what's next, then you don't get to impact them with the actual content they're about to consume. Make sense? All right. Strategy number 2. Next, you want to make sure that you have add-on screen captions and branding. Now, this is really important. You'd be surprised how many folks are kind of out there just putting their name or their law firm name on a piece of short form content and thinking that that is sufficient. One of the things that you want to create with your content is recognition. You want people, when they see your face or when they see your logo or when they see your brand colors, to identify the company, right? Whenever we see an apple with a portion of the apple carved out, what do we think of? We think of Apple, the technology company. That does not require us to ask any questions. That does not require us to probe further. It is simply a connector. It is now solidified in our mind, right? It has now gotten brand awareness and recognition to a very strong degree. And we associate those two things. We associate an apple with a piece of it out with the company, the technology company, Apple. If we saw that exact same apple and somebody was using it to try to indicate that they're about to eat an apple, it wouldn't have the same impact for us because we'd be thinking of the technology company. Same thing applies with your law firm, okay? Even though you're not as big as Apple, at least most of us aren't, you are still creating recognition. You're still trying to have every time someone sees your logo, they think of your company. And you do that very simply by having branding on your videos. And for a lot of you, you're probably thinking, well, wait a minute now. It's a big enough stretch that I have to get myself in front of a video. I don't like the sound of my voice. I don't like the way that I look. I don't know that I can get the lighting just right. I'm very anxious about that. Now you're telling me I also have to have captions and branding? Yes, you do. But the great thing is that there are a lot of free and low cost tools that you can use for this purpose. You don't have to break the bank on getting your branding onto videos. Lots of ways to do that. The ones that come to mind are CapCut, CapCut. There's also Descript. A lot of these platforms, again, they start out free. Now, of course, as with everything, it gets better when you are spending because these companies are in business to make money. And so I don't want you to think you can get, the Taj Mahal with the free programs, but you can do a lot with the free programs, right? So we talked about CapCut. We talked about Descript. There's Veed.io. I think those are some good places to start. And of course, we don't endorse any of these companies. I don't have a brand deal or an affiliate link with any of them, but these are the ones that come to mind the most. These are the ones that I know of that people are using. And again, you're talking about simply putting captions on the videos and putting branding on. Now, if you're on YouTube and you have the professional level subscription, they will put the captions on for you. So you have that to work with, right? The captioning comes with recording the videos. But for the branding, your logo, your name, your telephone number, you want people to be able to reach you, your website, all that information should be at the tail end. And sometimes people will even put it at the beginning of a video. But again, if you put it at the beginning of the video, it's going to be a quick flash because you want to use those 3 seconds at the beginning for the hook to get people to really want to lean into your content. All right. So strategy number 1, hook in the first 3 seconds. Strategy number 2, captions and branding. Strategy number 3, you want to make sure that you are consistent and strategic with your hashtags. Okay. Now, what do I mean by that? So the way that people communicate online is in abbreviated form, right? That's the whole purpose of short form content. You want the content to be a punchline. You don't want it to be a novel. You don't want it to be a paragraph. You don't want it to be something that a person has to sift through a lot of adjectives to get to the point. The point should pop out at you. And hashtags are a really great way to do that. So I want you to get into the habit of, one, creating hashtags that apply to your company, right? So if you are the Smith Law firm, you might want to be Smith Law every time you type something, right? Every time you post on social media, every time you send out your company newsletter. And hashtags, by the way, don't just have to be the name of the law firm, but they should associate with the law firm. I'll tell you, this was not something that I learned anything about or knew anything about when I first started doing this, but I just saw that people were using hashtags and I thought they were kind of cute. So this was like moons ago when I started my law firm. I started my law firm in 2013. And back then, every time I would post on social media, I would post the nickname that one of my clients gave me in a child abuse case. So in the state of New Jersey, the child welfare agency used to be known as DYFS, DYFS, which stood for the Division of Youth and Family Services, DYFS. So DYFS was the nickname. And my client, I used to, back in the day, wear 5+ inch heels whenever I came to court. And I'd come to court all dolled up. I kind of broke the mold about wearing suits. I was like, yeah, I'm tired of that. So I would wear some pretty bright colors and I would wear some pretty snazzy high heels. And one day I came to court like that and he said, wow, you look like such a diva. I said, all right, well, diva comes out when I argue for you. So I might as well look like one. So we got a little joke about that. And then one day we had a really great day in court and he hollered out, he was like, that's right. I hired the DYFS diva. Right? So that became my hashtag. People knew me as DYFS diva. In fact, one year my employees for my birthday took me out and one of the gifts that they gave me was a little bobblehead. And at the bottom of it was DYFS diva, right? So DYFS diva, cute little nickname, not associated with anything other than me as the personality that handled this type of case. Every time I would post something about my law firm, which offered this service, I would hashtag DYFS diva. Because it became an association, right? And it became an association enough that if you search it on social media, you can find it and you can find my posts associated with it, which is another great way that people can find you on platforms. Because as we know, search engines only index LinkedIn. That is the only social media platform where if you are posting on the social media platform, you can be found on a search engine. So you don't get the same traction posting something on Facebook to Google or to Bing or to Yahoo as a search engine the way that you would with LinkedIn. But the great thing is that by putting those hashtags out there, you are creating a brand, right? So you're furthering your brand. But the other thing is that you want to start creating an association between the hashtag and whatever it is that you talk about regularly. So if you are a commercial litigation attorney and you talk about commercial litigation that's happening in the public domain, you want to associate your company name, Smith Law, with that particular topic so that every time there's one of those topics out there, people will start to see you and connect Smith Law with that topic, that general area of discourse. And you don't have to limit it to your law firm name, but I do think your law firm name should be there. The other thing is that you want to keep in mind that the more specific you can get, the more you can connect the dots between I talk about criminal defense in the public domain and James Law talks about criminal defense in the public domain, the more that topics that come out getting connected with your hashtag really start to solidify you associated with that particular practice area. And again, you want to do this with your short form content. So when you think about posting videos, every time that you put your videos on YouTube, YouTube is a search engine, second largest search engine in the world, as we've discussed many times before. And you want to think about the fact that every time that hashtag is used and connected with the video, when people are searching topics, they're getting video hits the same way that they're getting word hits, right? So if I go online and I search P. Diddy, right? We just had the P. Diddy criminal defense trial on racketeering, sex trafficking, and a whole host of other things. When that trial is out and about and people are searching to get information about it, if they search certain keywords and those keywords are found on YouTube, the second largest search engine in the world, then they will oftentimes stumble upon content that they didn't even know existed that can answer your questions about that topic. And if you were somebody who was constantly using your hashtag in talking about that topic and someone searched keywords that landed on your videos, then you're going to have that connection that much stronger. Make sense? All right. Today we have been talking about how to use your short form video content, how to really optimize it so you can get the most bang for your buck there, and some of the strategies that you can use to not just optimize it, but really get into the habit of creating a process around this, right? Because, here at Law Firm Mentor, we are all about systems, and how to crush chaos in business is systematizing everything. So as you create, I want you to get into the habit of thinking, how can I create this into an SOP so that at some point it isn't me creating the video and adding the captions and adding the branding and posting the hashtag. At some point, you're just the talent. You show up, you record, you leave. Somebody else takes care of those things because it's in a written SOP. Okay. That's just a little footnote to our topic of today. Now, when we talk about SOPs, one of the things I want to remind you of is that we do have our Marketing and Sales Summit coming up in September in New Orleans. Okay. I've mentioned this before on several podcast episodes, but I'm really excited because I love New Orleans, right? What I like to say is that what happens in New Orleans stays on the internet. So, you don't get to be quite as, salacious as you once could be in New Orleans, and expect that to be held confidential. But I do find when I go to New Orleans, a lot of things I learn about that have happened there do not find their way onto the internet. So, we are a fun group here at Law Firm Mentor, but we are going to be providing a lot of the type of information we're talking about today, marketing and sales content, all throughout that summit. So I want to welcome you to learn more about that. You can learn more at events.lawfirmmentor.net. That is where you can find out about the retreat. And for those of you that are, again, here on YouTube, check us out next episode. And for those of you that are out in the podcast world, we invite you to join us over here on YouTube, where you can find a lot of information about not just the podcast, but also marketing, sales, systems, and people, the areas to get you more money and more free time in your law firm. I am Allison Williams, the host of the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast, and I will see you on our next episode.